Well, as we discussed last week
tomorrow night,
thank you, Rita. Last week in the Netherlands, Klaus Schwab's golden pin-up boy, Prime Minister Mark Rutte, is busy fulfilling the agenda of the World Economic Forum's Great Reset by turfing farmers off their own land because bureaucrats deem there's too much nitrogen in the soil. Ooh, this is the Great Reset that I've been warning you about for months, if not years, on this show. My thanks to Rebel News for these clips.
In the existing Next-Gen EU fund, there is still a lot of money, which is also partly funneled towards greening our economies, and that's exactly what we need to do to become less gas and oil dependent.
Where do you find still such a prime minister in the world? You find it in the Netherlands, and it's Mark Rutte.
If they're going to do everything that they want, if they want to go to the goal, they're going to reduce 50% of the farmers here in Holland.
Sure.
And that's only the farming, but the truck drivers is going to come down, industry is going to come down, mechanics is going to come down, everything is going down.
At the same time, people are aware that the climate is changing, and that we need to step up our collective efforts to make sure that we counter that and that we mitigate it.
Disgraceful. Last week, I also mentioned the crazy climate policies in Sri Lanka, where the army are brought in to stop ordinary workers getting gasoline. And this morning, as I said, we learned that Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has been forced to flee as protesters surround his residence. More madness caused entirely by the climate cult implementing climate change policies. No other reason. We're also now getting reports that Italian farmers are rising up to protest in Rome. Quote, they are saying, "We are not slaves, we are farmers. We cannot make ends meet." But it's not just Italian farmers. Polish farmers are now protesting. So too are Spanish farmers, as too are disgruntled German farmers. This is taking place everywhere, and you can slate it all home to insane globalist climate change policies. Indeed, Germany's largest landlord, wait for it, will be reducing heating for tenants in order to save energy, according to Reuters. I've lived in Germany. It's bloody cold, I can tell you. This, as I say, is the Great Reset in action. In the Netherlands, the proposals include a map displaying areas where up to 95% reduction in nitrogen in the soil by 2030 is required, with entire regions facing 70% reduction targets. Joining us now from the Netherlands is Wytse Sonnema, from the Netherlands Agriculture and Horticultural Organization. Wytse, great to see you. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
I'm good, thank you. Good morning.
Now, explain to us, Wytse, what is going on in Holland, why these insane policies, and why the farmers and the organization you represent are speaking up.
There's a broad sense of frustration, anger, even despair amongst farmers at the moment. And it's not about sustainability per se. We're amongst the most sustainable producers in the world, maybe the most sustainable producers. But as you've mentioned, there's a map now outlining nitrogen reduction targets of 50% nationally, 70 up to 95% in certain areas. And imagine if you're a fifth-generation farmer living on your land, making a living, being part of a local community, and you see a map saying there's basically no future. No future for farming, but also no future for the economic, social, cultural fabric of the countryside. Well, that's what happened here, and that leads to these kind of pictures of protests in the street.
James.
Tell us more about what exactly the rules are that are being enforced here, because From here, it sounds to me like there's an insane war on food and food production that's happening here. What are you being told about why they want to do it, where you're supposed to go, and how people are supposed to eat? Is the end plan here that everybody sells their land off cheap and then it's sold to developers or to big agricultural companies, or is there something else going on? And how does a supposedly center-right party like the VVD stand for this?
So I'm not going to give you a full history lesson, but since the Second World War, farmers in the Netherlands had a clear assignment, a clear mission, which is produce good food, make sure it's plentiful, make sure it's available always. And we've been massively successful at that. We've never had hunger again. We've never had empty supermarkets, even during COVID, even during the war in Ukraine now, with supply chains that have been taking a hit globally. In the Netherlands, we only spend about 8% of our income on food, which is both historically and internationally speaking extremely low. And it's fine if the mission changes, if you need us to do more than produce just good quality food. But it needs to be a realistic target. The current targets are a 50% reduction of nitrogen. We've already reduced nitrogen by 2/3 since the 1990s. So another reduction is possible. We've actually, with our membership base, the farmers of the Netherlands, put forth proposals showing that we can reduce further if that is what society asks. But a 50% reduction in 2030, that's in 7 years. It's simply unfeasible. And the protests you're seeing at the moment are, I believe, about more than just that. It's about a disconnect between, on the one hand, political ambitions, and on the other hand, real-world outcomes. It's about consumers asking for one thing and voters sometimes asking for a different thing. And as a farmer, you're an entrepreneur. It has to work out in the bottom line in the end.
Rita.
We've seen very little coverage of these protests in the Netherlands, but the vision is incredible. What is the response in the Netherlands itself? Are the people with you? Are they standing with the farmers? Or do they back these dramatic reductions?
So the current reduction plans have been announced exactly 1 month ago today, and the upheaval has been massive, but so has public support been. We're enjoying the full support of the public, and these protests, by and large, further increase that cement it. People understand that this is not just about the 50,000 farms we have in the Netherlands. It's also about those who. It's about the broader ecosystem. I've had the pleasure to work in Australian greenhouse a long time ago, picking cucumbers, and the greenhouse was actually built by the Dutch. This sort of technology, we're shipping it all over the world because we have a strong primary sector, because we have farmers here, and people understand that. It's about, as I said, the economic, the social, the cultural fabric of the countryside, of the rural Netherlands. So yes, we are enjoying massive public support. This hasn't translated yet to a changed political course, unfortunately.
Wytse, tell us about the misinformation that's going on regarding what is happening in Holland, in the Netherlands. And, following on from what Rita's saying about the coverage by the media, we're one of the very few shows. We've been talking about what's been happening in Holland here on this show, but you won't hear it mentioned anywhere else. I suspect that's true in many other countries around the world. Is there misinformation taking place in the Netherlands?
I wouldn't call it misinformation. No, there's a massive amount of attention to the trouble we're facing as a farming community and as the countryside in the broader sense. So there's always certain perspectives on the news, and some of them line up with reality better than others. And I do appreciate getting the time in your morning show to highlight the issues we're facing, because this is, in the end, a broader discussion about how can we tackle certain questions that society may or may not ask, and at the same time do it in a way that's actually realistic. that will lead to the cost being spread, because nothing is free. If you raise the bar on certain things, the bill cannot be paid by farmers themselves. If you're, say, an average farmer, as far as you can call an average, but say you're a dairy farmer, you have 100 cows, your income will be for at least 100 hours of work around the 30,000 euro mark. If you have to reduce by 50%, it's got to be negative 100,000. You're done in a year.
James.
Very quickly, I've heard that, how have the police been responding to the protests? I read overnight that a 16-year-old boy in a tractor was shot at by police and arrested and held in jail for driving a tractor at one of these protests. What is the police response, and how heavy-handed is it?
So we've all been shocked by the images of the police officer who discharged a firearm at indeed a 16-year-old in a tractor. The Dutch police are not known for firing at protesters, not at all. In the general sense, there has been a focus on de-escalation. At the same time, as I said, our farmers are frustrated, they're angry, they're despairing. And we do fear that this situation will continue this way and that more accidents may happen. It was a very close call. Luckily, nobody got physically hurt, but yes, we were all shocked. So I think it's important for the government to see the upheaval their plans have caused, not just among farmers, but in the broader community with massive support by the general public. Recognize that something needs to be changed.
Wytse, Sonnema, thanks so much for coming here on Outsiders. Good luck there in the Netherlands. We'll be keeping a close eye on it. This is what happens, folks, with climate change policies. People thrown off their own farms that they've been farming for generations. It is an absolute disgrace. Wytse, Sonnema, thanks so much for joining us.